Web3 TV.
Hello, Web3 TV. I'm Lisa Amnegard, and today we're at the HODL Summit in Dubai. Joining me right now is Erik Astramecki, CEO of CoinVoyage. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
And how's your day been so far?
It's been good. It's busy here.
And you flew all the way from Vegas to Dubai for the summit. So tell me a little bit more how you see the Dubai landscape when it comes to crypto.
I mean, the country is expanding rapidly. I mean, everyone's adopting crypto pretty aggressively. I think there's some technology upgrades that have to happen really for small, medium-sized entities to really be able to adopt this. But I think the government's taken a pretty assertive stance that they want this technology in place, and they're willing to work with companies to try and make that happen.
Definitely, and for you, that's very good news for CoinVoyage because you're in the cross-border payments sector. So can you tell me a little bit more about what you guys are doing and how you look at cross-border payments?
Yeah, when I started out about 4 years ago, there wasn't a way to reliably accept crypto. I mean, even today, most businesses, when they hear the word, there's a bit of a stigma tied to it. You know, if someone walks into majority of stores today and wants to purchase a good and offers to pay the vendor in Bitcoin, 90% of the time that vendor is going to say, no, I'm sorry, you have to pay me in US dollars, or in this case here, dirhams. And so really what CoinVoyage set about to do was allow the vendor to settle to their choice of currency, whether that's the dollar, whether that's the dirhams, but be able to receive any form of cryptocurrency from the user. So CoinVoyage really simplified that process, allowing a business to take that payment in Bitcoin, but our software settles it immediately to their choice of currency on behalf of them, allowing to reach a much broader consumer than they currently touch today.
Definitely, and also you're based in the US, but are you looking to sort of expand to the Middle East?
Yeah, so we're working through our regulatory compliance here in the UAE currently, and then obviously exploring both India, Saudi, and a few other areas that tend to be a little bit more accepting to crypto now. I mean, the US, up until very recently was a little bit more hostile towards this technology. That's changed a little bit, but UAE in general has, pretty much said like, hey, we're open for this type of business. Come here, show us it, figure out a way to be regulated and grow with us. So
definitely, I think that's a lot what people are looking for these days when it comes to using crypto as a payment. And you will be taking stage later on today, where you will be talking about cross-border payments. So what are some of the key messages you want the public to know?
Well, I think crypto's going through what I kind of call the credit card adoption curve. I'm a little bit older than most crypto people, and I remember when you went into a store and you tried to pay with a debit card and they say, sorry, we're cash or check only. And then eventually what happened is more people came in with debit or credit cards than they came in with cash. And of course, everybody today, if you went into a store and they said they didn't accept Visa or MasterCard, you would look at them very funny, right? And crypto's going to go through that same adoption curve, right? In the next 5-10 years, people are going to come into your online stores, they're going to come into your physical retail stores, and they may have Bitcoin, they may have ETH, they may have Solana, and most of these vendors, are going to need to be able to transact with that. They don't need to settle to it. Most of them are going to settle to a stable or a CBDC or whatever they want, but they need to be able to sell to that consumer, otherwise they risk losing that business. And so our message really is here is, you can do that safely, easily, with all the same reporting tools, all the same reconciliation tools that existing CEOs and CFOs are used to using today in their company. And really that it's not something to be afraid of, it's something to be adopted as more consumers look to make this choice.
And I know you've been also offering these types of using, let's say, crypto as a payment for vendors that, let's say, normally don't accept
Correct.
crypto. So how do they see this? Are they open towards it, or are they more kind of hostile?
It really is on two sides of the fence. You have, kind of the older, more entrenched companies that like to see regulations come in fact, and they're a little bit slower to adopt until they feel really, really safe. And then you have some businesses that have already lost business because somebody has come in and tried to buy their good with crypto, and they were nervous to take it, and therefore the client went somewhere else. And so now they're saying, well, we better look at this aggressively. Back to that credit card solution, if you were a company in 2002 and you had a merchant services, there probably was more people coming into your store trying to pay with cash or check than there were with debit cards. But eventually, you were ahead of the curve, and businesses that were late probably passed on a ton of business on the way to eventually deciding, oh, we better implement this technology because it's now hurting our bottom line. And so it's really a mixture of in between, and it really depends on where you are. Here in the UAE, it seems to be a lot more open, and most companies now, and even the government just announced that they're working with a few organizations to make this streamlined, and so it's on both sides.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I've ever used a check in my life.
Yeah,
No.
I have not either. I think I did to pay like the DMV once, and then eventually they're like, okay, we'll not make you mail a check.
Yeah. And now I think that's going to change a lot. And when we look at, let's say, kind of the next wave, there's been a lot of talk this year around stable coins. And I know in the US, they are looking to pass a Stable Act and also the Genius Act. So how do you see stable coins playing a role in cross-border payments going forward?
Stable coins are a settlement layer. And what I mean by settlement layer is most businesses, when they take a payment from a customer in crypto and say I come to your store and I want to pay you in Bitcoin, they're probably not going to keep that Bitcoin. They're going to take that Bitcoin immediately and they're going to swap it for a stable coin because they have to pay their vendors in stable coins, they have to pay their employees in stable coins. Their whole business is denominated in a currency that can't really go up and down 10% a day, right? That's not volatile. So stable coins are going to kind of act as the settlement layer for a lot of these transactions. However, the consumer, the end person, may be coming in your store with upwards of 5,000 different coins. And so while you may need to settle them to a stable, you will need to accept whatever currency they're looking to pay with and not require them to already be in a stable coin. If a consumer has to swap to a stable coin prior to doing business with you, they lose money every time that swap happens. And so simplifying that, reducing the cost for the consumer, and making it safe for the vendor to feel like, hey, if I took a $20,000 payment in Bitcoin, but when that settles, I'm gonna have $20,000 in stables. I'm not gonna lose 5% because the price changed. And that was really the challenge we set out to solve, was how do we make sure that they feel, just like today, if I swipe a credit card and I buy your good, you know that you're getting that same dollar amount in your checking account at the end of the day. You don't have to worry that there's going to be some weird fluctuation in price and you may be out a percentage of your cost of goods because of the price differential. And
Which I think is really important for retailers to know, because the people that are not, let's say, used to crypto, they see how volatile this market is. So knowing that, let's say, they're not going to be losing any money or gaining money, who knows, from accepting crypto is very, very important.
Well, it's just reaching that consumer that today has a massive amount of capital but doesn't have it in a stable. And instead of saying, we watched real estate people that, passed up on goods because somebody wanted to close and pay their closing costs in Bitcoin, and they're like, well, we don't know what to do with this. So, once you sell your Bitcoin, you offboard it to your checking account and it's in cash, then come and talk to us. And the more steps you make your consumer jump through to have to do business with you, odds are you're going to lose them and they're just going to go to another retailer that can meet them exactly where they are today.
Definitely. So many people could potentially lose out if they don't adopt to this new.
I think companies are already losing out on consumers. It just is not at enough wide enough degree, or they don't realize it yet. Going back to that credit card method, it's in the beginning, that person that came in with their debit card and that business that said, hey, we're cash or check, that guy's still saying, oh, okay, I guess I got to pull out my checkbook. But eventually a guy came in and said, I don't have a checkbook. You either take this card or I can't buy this good from you. And when that moment happens, then all of a sudden everyone says, oh, well, we have to have this. It goes from being early to, I'm going to lose out on a substantial amount of business if I don't have a technology in place to meet this consumer with the payment that they want to pay me with.
Definitely. And finally, I want to ask you about Trump, because your company is based in the U.S. and now Trump has been in office just over 100 days. So how has his stance around crypto changed the way you do business, or has it?
Well, I mean, it completely changed the way the SEC was targeting, crypto organizations. I mean, everyone's very familiar with Ripple spending hundreds of millions of dollars, battling the SEC. The SEC was extremely, extremely hostile towards, any company that was trying to transact in cryptos, making it difficult to get licensing, making it difficult for banks to even work with us. That's kind of completely 180'd. All of the major cases against exchanges and companies were dropped. I know we had this last bill kind of fail, But the first step in really having faith is not having a government that's actively targeting you based on your mode of business. And at least from that perspective, we no longer have a hostile government that's, and we have least of them that say, hey, we're willing to look at this intelligently and fairly and trying to figure out a framework that works. And while we figure it out, we're not going to send your company a cease and desist order. And while we take our time, stop you from doing business. And I think that's really the biggest changes.
Has it helped you with innovation and sort of coming up with new product offerings?
Not so much there. It's just kind of taken the target off your back. If you've been operating in the crypto space for the last 3 or 4 years, you've really had to have been doing it with like looking over your shoulder constantly and really worrying that really at any day, if you take a payment from a consumer that happens to cross some line or something, you could be in those crosshairs. And then having seen how a lot of those cases play out, once you got in those crosshairs of the SEC, you were not going to get out of them. And if you were a small entity that was worth tens of millions, there aren't many companies out there that have hundreds of millions like Ripple to go and defend these cases. And so if you didn't have that, you were simply going bankrupt. You were put out of business. It was a very Gestapo approach, which isn't the case anymore. But when you can operate without a target on your back, you can be much more aggressive. You can be much more creative because you're not confined anymore. And I think from there you're going to see a lot more technologies and a lot more things come to fruition where people aren't afraid anymore of pushing out products.
Definitely. And if anyone wants to learn more about CoinVoyage, how can they find you?
You can go to our website, coinvoyage.io. We have a quick explainer there. We have 24/7 support. It's really easy. You can self-set up. So really, any major company that's installed something like a PayPal API or use Stripe, our technology is very simple. It's just that third payment option on your e-commerce checkout page where somebody would select paying with their credit card, or even today, if probably everyone here has checked out with PayPal. You click PayPal, it opens up a window. You sign in, you pay. Very traditional type of process like that. And so there's no need to be scared. Even for those CFOs out there, they're like, oh my God, if I take this payment, how do I reconcile this? We have QuickBooks integrations coming out so you can export those payments and reconcile them as part of your P&Ls. All in the same way you did with every other traditional payment method today.
It's just quicker, faster, and cheaper, right?
Oh, significantly. I mean, I think everyone agree if you take debit or credit cards today, you're probably paying north of 2.5%. Our fee is 0.5%, and you're not waiting 5 days for your credit cards to settle. You're able to settle almost instantaneously in a matter of minutes, and so this just when money can move faster and you're not having to wait hours for an international wire. Or, God forbid, you need to send a payment out on Friday at 7 o'clock and the market's closed. Well, you can't send a wire till Monday. And, in a free world economy, when money can transfer, borderless and instantaneous, it just allows for commerce to grow exponentially.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me. And I look forward to watching your keynote speech later today. And I'm looking forward to seeing CoinVoyage here in the UAE in the near future.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
And I'll be bringing you more interviews. My name is Lisa Amnegard, and you're watching Web3 TV.
Web3.tv